Dozens of soccer fans have been injured and it's feared some killed.
People die in a football ground because it's not organised properly. That's why.
On April 15th, 1989, 54,000 fans packed into Hillsborough Stadium for the highly anticipated FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. It was supposed to be a day of soccer and celebration, but what happened next was horrifying.
The worst disaster in British sporting history.
There's too many people channeled into the middle, and then you got crushed either against the side, against the front, everywhere. I was crushed on a crash barrier.
By the end of this tragedy, 97 men, women, and children died in an accident that should have never happened. And before the families of the victims had a chance to grieve, the police controlled the narrative.
There is no cover-up. All we want is an in-depth inquiry.
What they have done to us is beyond cruel. It's absolutely disgraceful.
How did a police chief avoid jail time for an order that killed almost 100 people? What horrors did the fans witness on the pitch that day?
So there was people at the front getting crushed and basically screaming. They were screaming to the stewards and the police to open the gates, and they were just looking and walking past.
And why did the very authorities who swore to protect these fans blame them for their own deaths? To break down the physics of this trap, we spoke with the world's leading expert on crowds, Dr. G. Keith Still. He has consulted on some of the world's most significant and challenging crowd safety projects, and started his career with the Public Inquiry for Hillsborough. This is the story of the Hillsborough Stadium tragedy.
And welcome to Hillsborough. The sun has come out to greet you.
To understand Hillsborough, you have to understand what this game means. Soccer to North Americans, football to everyone in that stadium. In 1980s England, it's not just a sport, it's an escape. Jobs are disappearing, youth unemployment is rising, and on match day, your club gives you something to believe in. But football also has a darker reputation. This is the hooligan era, and by the late 80s, fans are often treated less like supporters and more like a threat. That fear shapes the stadiums. Steel pens, high fences, locked gates, a design built to control crowds. But when disaster hits, those safety measures don't protect people. They trap them. On this fateful afternoon, Hillsborough isn't a blank slate. It's a known risk site, packed with known design problems, about to host one of the biggest matches of the year. And Liverpool fans are being sent to the worst part of it, Leppings Lane. A massive bottleneck traps more than 24,000 outside just 23 entry gates. Even worse, the 10,000 people with standing room tickets are forced through only 7 gates. This isn't crowd flow. It's an environment reaching a breaking point.
You've got to understand that there's always a pressure point at which the system's going to fail. It doesn't matter how wide it is or how big it is or what the system is. There's a volume of people that can flow through it because it has to match its capacity. As soon as your volume of people exceed the capacity, you're going to have a problem. Imagine you have an egg and you're going to try and push it back into a chicken.
And Hillsborough already had a dangerous reputation. In 1981, this same end of the stadium crushed fans badly enough to break arms, legs, and ribs. Deaths were just narrowly avoided. 8 years later, it's the same recipe for disaster with bigger crowds. Now, add the final ingredient, the man in charge. Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield gets promoted to match commander only 19 days before the game. He has never commanded a sellout football match at Hillsborough, let alone trained for a crowd this size. By 2:30 p.m., just 30 minutes before the kickoff, thousands of Liverpool supporters are still stuck outside. Nobody wants to miss the match. The crowd presses forward. Then, pressure peaks. People are pinned against entry gates, walls, and each other. At that point, you're not really choosing where to move anymore. The crowd is moving you.
It was just like carnage, honestly. We got crushed outside. Like you couldn't even lift your arms.
Outside the stadium, the pressure is getting worse. Police Superintendent Roger Marshall asks for the large exit, Gate C, to be opened to relieve the crowd. At 2:52 p.m., Chief Duckenfield gives the dangerous order to open the gate. But if you open a floodgate, you have to control where the flood goes.
Pressure was building up externally to such an extent that the mounted police, the horses were being moved off the feet. At that stage, you've got very few options but to open Gate C and to allow that crowd to flow into an area to alleviate the pressure. However, the entrance to the tunnel that led to gates pens 3 and 4 should have been shut because that was already full.
The noise struck me. It was very, very loud, shouting, screaming, crying, appalling scenes of desperation.
Around 2,000 desperate fans surge through Gate C. Because police commanders leave that central tunnel completely unguarded, the crushing pressure from the street is instantly transferred straight into the heart of the stadium. The pressure outside is relieved, but inside Leppings Lane, the death trap is loaded.
Now people come through Gate C, the tunnel's immediately in front of them. Of course they're going to head to the place where they think they're going to get the best vantage point. So that's the failure there, was not externally and not the decision to open the gates, but then what happened next. That comes down to the responsibility within the site of the stadium safety manager.
If you're a fan walking in late, you don't know those pens are full. You just follow the flow. Normally, police redirect fans to the emptier side pens. That doesn't happen. So thousands of fans keep pouring in. Safety experts later calculate Pen 3 should have held about 822 people. Instead, at one point, around 1,576 people are packed in there. This is where Hillsborough becomes a survival lesson. In a crowd crush, the danger isn't usually getting trampled like in a movie. The real killer is pressure. Bodies press so tightly together that your chest can't expand. This is known as compressive asphyxia.
What happens is the pressure builds up so much you can't breathe in. And after 30 seconds you lose consciousness, and after 6 minutes you're brain dead. So you have a very, very short response in a high density progressive crowd collapse or crowd crush when people fall on top of each other. It only takes 5 people pushing against one to create the amount of pressure that would break a rib.
And the scary part is, your natural instinct makes it worse. Pushing harder only increases the pressure. To survive, you need to protect your airway and look for space before the density locks you completely.
If you are caught in one of those crowd sways where you're being moved from front to back, wait till it moves back, try moving sideways, it moves forward, moves back, moves sideways again, and you'll find yourself moving out of the pressure zone.
But at Hillsborough, thousands of people have no choices left. The match still kicks off at 3 p.m. The game starts while people behind the goal are already screaming for help. The noise of football drowns out the sound of suffocation.
Interesting that the crowd has spilled over onto the perimeter there.
Then at 3:04 p.m., Peter Beardsley hits the crossbar for Liverpool. The crowd erupts. The front barrier finally gives under the pressure.
Clearly, something has gone badly wrong at that end of the ground where the Liverpool supporters are.
What starts as a crush becomes a human avalanche.
People panicking, people screaming, because you suddenly got no control. If you lost your footing, then you were going under. I mean, the only thing stopping you from going under was the fact that there was no room to fall. But if you happened to stumble as a pocket of air opened, you were gone.
At this point, fans aren't storming the pitch. They're climbing up, over, and through anything they can reach because the pen behind them is crushing the air out of their lungs.
So what did you actually see as they were spilling over?
Well, people were just crushing, and there was a lad and his girlfriend, and they were just screaming. These words were, "Please God help me," and I believe the girl died. Her face was just blue.
But when police see people spilling onto the grass, they see hooligans.
Police were trained, and the environment at that time with the various pens was pitch invasion. So as soon as they see something that looks like a pitch invasion, it triggers that part of the memory. Oh, this is how we deal with it, a pitch invasion. But it wasn't, it was a crowd crush, and not knowing what the difference between the two were was vital to understanding what they should have done. Of course, it's recognised it was a high pressure build-up and therefore allow people on the pitch and stop the match. So that was a mistake, but that was all down to not understanding what you're seeing.
Because police mistake a crowd crush for a riot. They treat a medical emergency like a stadium brawl. Instead of helping, officers form defensive lines, treating the dying like criminals.
People getting carried out, and there was no organisation. The fence, they should have been brought up. People were trying to rip the fence up, and the police were trying to stop them.
I can only assume that their attitude was, they've brought it on themselves. If they're going to behave like that, they've brought it on themselves. It's their fault.
Some fans are passed over fences. Some survive because strangers form human chains and lift them out. At 3:06 p.m., the referee finally stops the match. But by then, the pitch has turned into a triage zone. People are lying on the grass. Families are searching faces in the chaos. And the man in charge is about to tell a lie that will poison the next 3 decades.
So are you saying the fans are to blame then?
The police certainly aren't to blame. Because if the fans would do what the police are asking them to do, there wouldn't be any problem.
After the match stops, you would expect the rescue response to snap into action. But it doesn't. Of the 42 ambulances that arrive at Hillsborough, only 3 make it onto the pitch. 2 get there simply because their crews refuse to wait for police orders. The first responders and fans are overwhelmed. A handful of ambulance staff, volunteers, and ordinary people doing whatever they can.
I then just tried to do what I could for people on the floor and stuff. Fans were ripping advertising hoardings up and using them as stretchers. They were getting the coats, they were taking coats off, spinning them like a towel, like you flick a towel, and they were using 3 or 4 to a man to carry off bodies.
The human psyche is very altruistic. We'll help people in distress. So all of the fans that helped, and I'm sure that there were many lives saved because of that intervention, the fans, as you say, carrying away hoardings.
Many of the injured and dying are carried toward the stadium gym, turning it into a temporary mortuary. Liverpool supporters Trevor and Jenny Hicks lose their daughters, Sarah and Vicky, to the chaos. When they finally find them, they're confronted with a decision no parent should ever have to make.
I was actually kneeling down doing mouth-to-mouth on Sarah when the St John's ambulance came on the pitch. So we picked Vicky up and we put her in the ambulance. And I left with this awful dilemma. Do I get back on the ambulance and go with Vicky and leave Sarah alone? Well, if there's a low point in your life, that's it, I think.
While families are living moments like that, the lie is already forming. And then the story flips. At about 3:15 p.m., Duckenfield tells FA official Graham Kelly that Liverpool fans forced open the gate. It gives the disaster a fake villain. South Yorkshire police feed stories to the media claiming supporters are drunk, ticketless, violent, and attack officers. Then comes one of the most infamous newspaper front pages in British history. The truth. The Sun paints the fans as hooligans, claiming they pickpocketed the dead.
The claim that it was Liverpool fans that they were drunk is complete rubbish. It's absolute nonsense. There were no drunken fans. It was not crowd behaviour. It was a pure physics.
But the smear doesn't stop in the papers. It's later revealed that victims, including children, are tested for alcohol. Police also run background checks on some of the dead, trying to find anything that can push the guilt further away. Families are burying their loved ones, and the system is still searching for ways to blame them. Then comes the paperwork. Investigators later find hundreds of police statements are altered. Criticism of South Yorkshire police is removed. Lines are crossed out, facts are rewritten, and the establishment is hard at work to cover their tracks. So how do ordinary families fight the police, the media, and the legal system at the same time? By refusing to give up.
In the end, only time will help ease the feelings of the people of Sheffield and Liverpool. Both cities are in shock and will be for some time.
For the families, the fight for justice becomes a decades-long battle against a system that keeps saying no. At the 20th anniversary memorial, thousands chant "Justice for the 96." the death toll at the time. The pressure becomes too great for the government to ignore, and the Hillsborough Independent Panel is created. The 96 will later become the 97, when in 2021, Andrew Devine, who suffered brain injuries from the crush, passed away.
Do you agree with the following, that you failed to recognise that there was a need to close that tunnel?
I did fail to recognise that, sir, yes.
And therefore failed to take steps to achieve that?
I did, sir.
And that failure was the direct cause of the deaths of 96 persons in the Hillsborough tragedy.
Yes, sir.
In 2019, David Duckenfield is acquitted of manslaughter. His defense successfully argued that Hillsborough was a systemic failure, not the fault of one commander.
For 3 decades to see this day when Mr. Duckenfield will be brought before a criminal court. What's just happened in there is just outrageous.
2 years later, the trials for officers accused of altering police statements also collapsed. As for why other officers avoided discipline, many had retired before December 2017, putting them beyond the reach of internal proceedings. No matter what investigators found, the British system let them leave with their pensions untouched. The families get the truth in public, but ultimately, no one is held accountable. But at the very least, they did get an apology.
We're sorry that we got it so wrong. Policing was the main cause of the tragedy that happened that day. And we recognise that the impact of the tragedy has continued to blight the lives of those affected by it ever since, and will continue to do so.
If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, whether it's at a packed sporting event or a gathering of some form, it's important to know what's going on around you.
One of the early warning signs is if you're approaching a site and the signage is bad and there's no stewards, there's no ushers, well, that should give you a clue. If they can't get the entry system right, what else have they got wrong? Is that whenever you enter a venue or an event, be aware of the sounds, be aware of where the exit points are. So be aware of how is the density around me building up. What are the sounds? You often hear sort of cries of distress being a precursor to crowd crushing just ahead of you. If you hear that and you're moving towards it, stop and think.
Today, the fences are gone. English stadiums look nothing like the cages of the 1980s. But Hillsborough stands as a permanent warning of what happens when people are treated like a problem instead of human beings. Every year on the anniversary of that fateful day, the city of Liverpool stops to remember. At 3:06 p.m., a moment of silence is given for the 97. Because in the end, this isn't just a tragedy of institutional corruption. It's the story of everyday fans risking their lives to save strangers, and how their strength will always be more powerful than a system's lies. At the end of the storm, they hold their heads up high, and they never walk alone.
If nothing else comes out of this, it's got to be that people don't lose their lives again, coming to do what they like to do, which is watch football.
If you want to see another disaster where warning signs are ignored until the structure itself becomes a trap, watch our episode on the Hyatt Regency Skywalk collapse next. We'll see you next time on another episode of How to Survive.